So I have a question because, for example, I'm thinking now, there's things piling up that need to be dealt with.
Right.
And if you have a limited amount of time, certain things are going to take precedence over other things. So I would think that up until now, perhaps when we were trying to make things happen and make things move, they were vetoing, and maybe we didn't even hear about it. So why now, like Jem mentioned, is there such a high volume of these anti-LGBT laws being questioned and put into question? Is it because of one particular person? Is it because the pendulum is swinging? Why now is it all bubbling up?
It's a really good question, and I think it's a number of things. So first, we have to acknowledge what you said, which is there are important issues that need to be resolved, right? And you think about anything that might impact your life every day, the roads that you drive on, or, the readiness for storms, or the fact that it floods all the time when it's raining outside, or the cost of property insurance and things like that. Those are real, actual problems that are not being solved while we're having conversations about other things, like whether or not books can be on a classroom shelf that feature two moms instead of a mom and a dad, right? And the question of why are we having those conversations is an important one because it's a merging of a couple groups of people. On the one hand, I was in high school when George Bush was running for re-election. It was really hard for me to be a queer person. I was not out for most of my high school experience. The same people that hurled slurs at me in the hallway exist in our community now. They're, my age, they're raising children. They're the very same people who are protesting the existence of LGBTQ people.
Yeah, they didn't change.
They didn't change. And the think tanks that are driven by that sort of ideology or mentality, they asked the question when we got so much progress, when we won marriage equality, when we won adoption rights, all these things, they asked the question, how do we stop it? How do we peel back that progress? Because they don't believe that LGBTQ people are deserving of the same rights as everyone else. And so they did the focus groups, they did polling, and they came back and they said trans kids. That is the wedge issue that you can use to then start to peel back progress on all the other things. And that group merged with the politicians who are looking for a vehicle to take them where they're going, right? Someone like DeSantis really wants to be president.
Very politically motivated.
Very politically motivated. He calls the think tanks and says, what's going to get me there? They say trans kids. And so you have the last few years have been so driven by anti-LGBTQ policies and rhetoric. And it is about the one faction who really wants to peel back progress, and the other who's like, I just want to get elected. Tell me how to get there.
Well, like Jem mentioned, Dwayne Wade, who love you, Daddy.
Also love you.
We love you, Daddy. No, but we were talking about how he actually left the state because he has a trans child and is a great supporter. And at some point, what are you going to do if your child is not protected and doesn't have access to what they need?
That's right.
I believe Equality Florida actually issued a travel ban for trans individuals.
So we, in April, we issued our first advisory. And I should clarify that, we're not a government entity, so we can't ban people from being here. We can't, and we didn't, very intentionally, we didn't make a blanket recommendation because for one person, the experience may be different than for another. But we thought it was really important as the inquiries were piling on. People were asking us, is it really safe for me to be in Florida right now? We thought it was really important to say honestly and out loud, here's what it actually feels like. Here's the impacts of laws. If you are a trans woman who lives in New York City and is coming to Miami Beach for a conference, you deserve to know that you can be arrested in the Miami airport bathroom for using the same stall you would use back home. You should know that before you make plans to come to that conference. And we wanted to really lay it all out and then tell people, whether you come or don't come, we need you in the fight, but you should have all the information necessary to make the best decision possible for you and your family.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And my opinion, my humble opinion, I do see that there's the intersectionality of our governor's own private motivations and this very real group of individuals in our country, in the world, who would like to erase LGBTQ people.
That's right.
There's probably no other way to describe it. So I would love to talk a little bit about sort of some of the things that are happening worldwide before we zero in on Florida.
Sure.
Because I know that there have been some events, just so that people understand that we are focusing on the bills in Florida because we're trying to represent the state that we live in, that we form a part of, and we're in this fight. But the influence that what's been going on in Florida has countrywide is big.
That's right.
And there's been violence and incidents happening outside of Florida.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that people understand that this is not something that's happening just in Florida.
We're starting fires.
Right.
That's right.
Starting fires.
Elon Musk recently, I saw it randomly on Twitter. Elon Musk declares that the terms cisgender and cis, which have been used throughout history for hundreds of years, is now considered a slur.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, bizarre that we're talking about Elon Musk declaring anything.
I
He
know.
has absolutely no expertise on any of the subject
start
matters.
declaring something.
Exactly. I also declare that oysters, for instance, are vile. People should stop eating them.
That's hilarious. Well, I mean, he does technically own Twitter, right? So I guess he means
does own Twitter.
On Twitter, you can no longer use these terms, which is again absurd.
Which is wild. I mean, if you look at my mentions every day, there's a lot worse things in there than calling someone what they are.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a cisgender person. That is an adjective to describe me.
Right.
It's just a term,
That's
a technical term.
Right.
Used to describe a certain group of people that's not meant to inflict any kind of connotation.
Right.
Okay, so another thing that I definitely want to touch upon, and one of the reasons why this is expressly important to me, the three of us here do identify as somebody, as an individual under the LGBTQ plus umbrella, and we were all kids once. As you mentioned, when you were in high school, Governor Bush was trying to get reelected. So I know I can say with a fact that we were all well into our adulthood before something like gay marriage was even legalized.
Oh yeah.
And as kids, we had a very different experience than I can proudly say I hope kids today are having.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why these issues are so important is because this group of individuals being targeted, LGBTQ plus youth, that is sort of like the pawn in this big political game, is already so highly at risk of attempting to unalive themselves. Some statistics that I would love to share are that LGBTQ plus youth are 4 to 5 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. And most importantly, one of the statistics I'd like to share is that statistic can be reduced by 40% if that child has just one accepting adult.
That's right.
In their world. So we are, this is concerning for us because it is a life or death issue. It's no longer just politics.
That's right.
I think it's also, like you mentioned, when we were growing up, we didn't talk about it as much and it wasn't as available in movies or television and talks. And it was kind of like hush, hush, like don't talk about it, keep it hidden. Like I had this conversation with Jem. I wouldn't have even thought about quote unquote coming out if I didn't already have some kind of private experience or gone through my own process. And I'm seeing so many kids now that are being so open into even just exploring mentally before going out in the world and having these experiences. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
However, it does create so much more conversation. And that's why people are freaked out. I mean, there have always been little kids that feel, queer or trans or whatnot, but it might not have been as easy to talk about it.
That's right.
And now that we're able to talk about it, everybody has all these opinions. And we often say, the world is always going to crush you, whether you're, queer, whether you're straight, you're going to encounter some kind of turmoil. But that person to person connection, that need, I think that's what you need to have, strong mental support and feel good within yourself. But then outside of that, where you live plays a huge deal.
Absolutely.
Into how you're living, your education. And, I was reading that you said, why are we so scared of someone in a wig reading red fish, blue fish?
Right.
Like it's,
when we could be talking about anything else. Well, what you're getting at is for me where the hope and optimism comes in. which is to say that right-wing backlash like we're experiencing in this country is always a lagging indicator of where society is, right? The right wing is fighting so hard against LGBTQ people because they've already lost the culture war. They wouldn't be fighting so hard to ban books about queer people from shelves if there weren't books about queer people on shelves. They wouldn't be fighting so hard to, erase trans people from society if trans people weren't more socially accepted and visible than ever before. And the reason that gives me hope and optimism is because there is no putting that genie back in the bottle, right? There's no world in which young people don't have access to TikTok and Instagram anymore and no longer know that LGBTQ people exist. That's already out of the bag, right?
I'm just saying, why wouldn't we want to do it in a healthy, loving way?
That's right.
Like you learn about everything else. Like just like you said on TikTok, they're very healthy queer platforms. There's also ridiculously violent, terrible things that some people are queer and some people are not. That's what I think the problem is, that we're making they're making this statement, right? The opposers, that, oh no, it's all bad. It's like, I'm sorry. You think that everything you do is great. And honestly, this made me sad. The other day I was thinking during my time, and we're turning 30 next year. We're still very young, but I can't think of one politician when I was growing up that outwardly and vocally supported the LGBTQ plus community just for the sake of doing so.
Right.
Like there had to have been something to happen or some kind of incident, or they're backed into a corner where they have to say something. I can't think of one, white straight male in my lifetime, which is most of what I saw on TV, that would be like, hey, by the way, no problem with the queers, like do your thing. It was just not
until they wanted
about.
our votes.
Right.
Until they wanted votes.
Until we successfully pushed the social needle to a place where the country said, okay, enough.
Launching.